The Persephone Foundation. Timeline Archives. Timeline designation 2016-007. America Aeterna. America had humble beginnings as a republic, where it won its independence from the British king, kept itself together after a civil war, defeated the hated Germans and their infamous king, Adolf Hitler, and became a world-class power. However, the glory of America would only come about after the creation of the American Empire. The imperial era started with the assassination of Donald Trump after winning the election for President of the United States. A populist, Trump rode the common people's discontent with the political elites of the Republic to victory. But his victory would be short-lived. Trump was assassinated just a year into his presidency, succeeding only in building a wall on the southern border of the Republic and launching the Freedom Star nuclear defense system. The assassin was hired by the Republic's political elites, and this fact did not stay hidden for long. Trump's assassination ended with a civil war, particularly after his daughter, Ivanka Trump, managed to rally a mob to take control of New York City during her father's funeral. The war ended with the Trump faction winning over the old establishment, which were forced out of the country, imprisoned, or executed. Even Hillary Clinton, the de facto leader of the old establishment, was forced to flee to Russia, where she was executed by the FSB. After this initial conflict, the triumvirate of the Trump siblings broke apart, and they fought for ultimate power between themselves. Eric Trump ended up victorious, particularly after his victory over Ivanka and her Russian allies. Eric claimed the presidency, vice presidency, and became Speaker of the House, effectively making him supreme autocrat of the American Empire. His preferred title was Chairman, which would become the title of the supreme leader of the empire. The Americans never stopped using the term United States of America, but it was an empire nonetheless. Russia was annexed after the end of the Triumvirate War, and the states of the European Union were annexed directly, after they rejected the new empire. After the annexation of Japan, the empire stopped expanding, as internal power struggles reoriented Western ambitions, and the empire realized that having client states was a better system. These client states would enforce imperial interests, defending the empire against criminals and terrorists, while their leaders would be given lavish gifts and maintained in power by the imperial military. The empire would get into wars against the People's Republic of China and the Qin dynasty, which overthrew it. But with both sides being unable to truly defeat the other, they settled for proxy wars in the Middle East. The Trump dynasty was overthrown after a few generations, and President Neville Trump committed suicide, and the Secret Service took temporary control of the empire. Afterward, a true monarchy was established over the empire, and the institutions of the American Republic were weakened further into irrelevance. As the empire expanded and consolidated its rule, imperial citizens enjoyed the highest standard of living on Earth. However, technology stagnated, and the massive, impoverished population of the non-imperial world allowed the empire to outsource almost all of its production, giving little reason for the corporate lords of the empire to invest in labor-saving technology. As the empire's population grew and placed more burdens on the state, and larger and lengthier wars were fought with the Chinese, the empire turned to debasing its currency, raising taxes on everybody, and turning to distractions such as mass media, gruesome sports, and state-administered drugs to keep the population docile. Eventually, a new religion, Hubbardism, would take over the empire. This religion, arising from the persecuted Scientology sect, was initially punished by the Empire before it became tolerated and eventually the state religion. All the while, the Empire was occasionally riven with civil strife, as the Empire did not have an official succession system like the Old Republic did. Whenever a chairman died, and sometimes this was in rapid succession, there was a succession crisis. Often the Secret Service, or the military, would have their candidate placed by force, and he would be overthrown by a rival. Especially bad was the crisis of the 23rd century, which saw 3 rival chairmen taking control of the Pacific region, the European region, and the American region, ending with reunification and reform. A permanent division of the empire between the Old World and the New World would later be implemented, with the Old World governed from London. This system was implemented in order to facilitate the easier administration of the empire, but unfortunately it would not work. It only complicated matters, and eventually there were 2 chairmen ruling from Washington and London, respectively. While the empire stopped expanding territorially, its bureaucracy grew. Client states, such as those in the Caribbean and Central America, demanded membership into the empire, as their cultures became more Americanized. The borders of the empire grew impossible to defend, as recruitment among Americans declined, and the imperial military was used in civil wars and to subdue growing civil unrest. Non-American mercenaries, particularly from the so-called mercenary nations, were hired to defend the empire, but they remained loyal to the coin, not the crown. As wages tanked and currency became further debased, most people did not have enough money in their savings or salary to live. They made contracts with the large corporations to serve as indentured servants for life, so long as their needs were provided for. Eventually, this became the basis for neo-feudalism. To further compound the Empire's problems were the Centauri invasion. The Centauri were nomads from Alpha Centauri, presumably expelled by a more technologically advanced civilization. The Centauri were incapable of understanding the technology on the ships they crashed on, but were adept at adopting human technology. Resembling crabs, the Centauri and humans eventually figured out each other's languages, but it was too late to negotiate peace by then. The Centauri landed in Africa and South America, the hot climate seemingly to their preference. The Centauri, while ruthless, eventually gained human followers. The world briefly united to stop the Centauri, but the Centauri proved to be ironic bringers of peace, as they treated their subject peoples fairly and defended them against warlords and criminals that once infested these states. The Centauri eventually gained local support, making efforts to retake the continents untenable. While the Centauri served as a challenge for the Imperial forces, they were unable to conquer the Empire. They were able to conquer and secure Africa and South America. This sent the mercenary nations further into the Empire, where they were reluctantly welcomed, so long as they contributed to the Empire's defense. This further fractured the Imperial military, which led to more civil wars, as different nations demanded that their warlords become chairmen of the Empire. While the Eastern Empire was able to weather this, the Western Empire did not, and it was not long before parts of the Imperial military and their civilian nations were creating independent kingdoms in North America. As Imperial authority had become oppressive and inefficient, Americans welcomed this change of rule so long as the barbarians did not repeat the same mistakes as the old empire. While the new kingdoms wanted to become more Americanized, they did retain enough of their old culture so that the old empire was gone forever. and they did take care to distinguish themselves from the practically defunct empire. In the East, London has written off the West as a lost cause. While they still call themselves American, the Eastern American Empire, just the American Empire to the Imperials, have little interest in the continent now, but some ambitious men are planning a possible reclamation and reunification of the American Empire as a whole. However, there continue to be intermittent Centauri invasions in the Middle East. Even though no major fighting has happened for centuries, nobody knows how long the peace will last. Further, there remains the threat of China, which has weakened somewhat but is still in a position to challenge the Eastern Empire. Further east, the former imperial states of Japan, Korea, and Taiwan continue their splendid isolation, although they are occasionally raided by pirates from East Asia. These small kingdoms often war with one another, and the remnants of American culture are quickly being swept away, and Eastern culture is once again on the rise. Now the Empire in the West is a shadow of its former self, restricted mostly to the old 13 colonies of the Republic. The Republic of Del Norte is the premier power in North America now, made up primarily of Mexicans and Central Americans who fled the waves of migrants from South America settling in their old country in the wake of the Centauri invasions. They and the other mercenary nations have embraced neo-feudalism and done away with the old imperial order, replacing it with more local military authority. The Western Empire does have Cascadia and Amero-Canada as kingdoms which swear loyalty to Washington, but are in fact independent and will almost assuredly be invaded soon. Technology and infrastructure continue their breakdown. Imperial authorities were unable to fix infrastructure due to lack of funding and the civil wars. And now imperial authority is gone, and the military rulers of the new states are uninterested in rebuilding until they can secure all of North America for themselves. Even old petroleum engines, modified hastily to operate on wood gas, are starting to be used again, as hydrogen cell factories remain in disrepair. The American Empire has fallen, or it is just about to. The great bald eagle that has ruled the world has been broken. Its armies cower on the eastern seaboard. Its chairman, Donald Washington, is but a teenager, placed into the Oval Office by his father. And now, 780 years after the founding of the American Republic, the army of Odellis Acosta marches to Washington, D.C. to take control of the eastern seaboard, so that Acosta may become King of America. But in doing so, he will also bring the symbolic end to an era of light, and bring forth an era of darkness. Points of interest. The Kingdom of Central America, once the heart of the Western American Empire. It is a decentralized Hispanic state, governed primarily by county chieftains, with one high chief to interact with the rest of the world. Its county chiefs have divided loyalties between Del Norte and the Canadians. The Kingdom of Deseret was originally founded as the state of Utah during the days of the American Republic. Settled by the Mormons, a persecuted ethnic group during the Republic's earliest days, Deseret remained culturally distinct throughout the Empire's lifespan. The modern Deseret is a Hispanic state, but one that has adopted Mormon culture. The Kingdom of Soldo America, yet another one of the Latin American states formed by the mercenary nations. After the weakening of the Western American Empire, the Brazilian mercenaries took control of the southern regions and formed an independent kingdom, one of the more powerful ones in the region. The Soldo Americans have aligned with the Canadians against Del Norte, which is trying to expand its hold over the former American Empire. With the fall of the Western Empire, Del Norte took command of the Counter-Centauri defensive line in the Caribbean. This includes the all-important Panama Canal Zone, which has given Del Norte control of both trade and defense in the region. All of this has helped cement Del Norte's claim to be the legitimate successor of the American Empire in the West. The Hawaiian kingdoms, heavily Japanized during the Imperial era, broke away from the Empire along with the Japanese archipelago when Imperial rule in the Pacific collapsed. Each of the Hawaiian Islands is its own kingdom, all of them content to war with themselves over control of the entire island chain. The most important kingmaker is the Commandant of Pearl Harbor, a warlord with control of the last remnants of the Imperial Pacific Fleet. The Kingdom of Old Mexico has collapsed, much like the Western Empire, into warlordism. Ethnic Mexicans make up a minority in Old Mexico, which has been flooded with mercenary nations from Latin America and, in some cases, Africa. Satellite scans of the Amazon have revealed packets of human resistance deep in the Amazon, giving the world some hope that humanity may once again become the dominant species in South America. There are also rebel cells in the Chilean Andes, but they have been known for a while. They still regularly communicate with humans around the world, and seem to be troubled by the fall of the Western Empire. The Falklands remain the main military base the Eastern Empire maintains to keep the Centauri contained. The garrisons here grow tired of the Empire, since they are assigned to this post for years at a time, often as punishment. Even people in London question the necessity of this garrison, since the Centauri have shown no interest in expanding from their current borders for more than a century. Germany was once the great enemy of the Americans. Back in the days of the Republic, the Americans fought two major wars against the Germans, the second one ending in the destruction of the German nation. Even today, the Empire regards Germany poorly. Russia was once a rival to the Republic. When Ivanka Trump and what remained of the old establishment fled to Moscow after Eric Trump took power in Washington, it became a bastion for opposition to the young empire. Ivanka collaborated with President Putin, the longtime ruler of Russia, and she quickly adopted Russian culture. After a short war, which ended in the atomic annihilation of Moscow, the empire took control of Russia as Trump's personal property. It remains an important imperial province, particularly for its resources. Anatolia has become the dumping ground for mercenary nations within the empire, which has turned the state of Turkey into a hotbed of ethnic strife. London has considered breaking apart the state, but such action is opposed by the powerful Turkish elites. The state of Sinai is another dumping ground for mercenary nations, which is only appropriate since this is the front line against the Centauri in Africa. Of course, only imperial rule keeps the mixture of rival ethnic groups and religions from all killing each other. Even then, sometimes it's not enough, because there is the occasional race riot. Using modern terraforming, the Arabian Desert has bloomed, allowing mercenary nations from Africa to thrive, at least in a way. The Africans are just as impoverished as they were prior to the Centauri invasion, but they aren't bleached bones in the desert. The Sahara blooms again, but this time with Centauri life. The Empire worries that these xenospores may blow over the Mediterranean, and are considering defoliant raids. Madagascar closed itself off during the Centauri invasion, and strangely the Centauri never bothered to land here. it remains an imperial province. Iran has been chipped away over the centuries, particularly after the fall of the Islamic Republic and the establishment of a pro-American kingdom. The early empire-appointed shahs remain in power, and they are a frequent proxy for conflict against the Chinese vassal states in the Middle East. Here, the great game between the Americans and the Chinese continues. These interminable wars weaken both empires, but with the Western Empire a lost cause, London is focused on consolidating its power in the East. After the atomic wars in India, the Indian kingdoms have kept to themselves, and have been ignored by the rest of the world. The road tribes of India war against each other, creating a harsh, violent environment. The incursion of Hubbardism has inspired some would-be prophets, although none of them have been successful, at least, not yet. Eisenhower's wall continues to be maintained, although it has largely fallen into disrepair. After Imperial Korea became independent, it has lost the funding necessary to maintain the wall. This has given the Shen dynasty some aggressive ideas. The Philippine Islands were administered from Washington, but their strategic importance regarding China meant that, as the Western Empire weakened, the Eastern Empire took control. This has been a Persephone Foundation timeline reading. Thank you for listening.